Good evening. Got a nice crowd. Tell me, and be honest, did you miss us? Well, we missed you too. Now it seems like old times. You know, we have the audience inside and outside. We've got the wine, lemonade, the cookies. I think there are enough cookies for everybody here. Did you hear that, Arthur? Cheese, etc., etc., etc. But the refreshments and the goodies are probably not the reason you're here. You're here to listen to the artists and to see their work, and to see people you haven't seen maybe a year and a half. It's a hell of a long time. The virtual openings we had, you know, they just didn't cut the mustard, but that was about all we could do at the time. For those of you who are new to Woodland Pond, I'm Al Chasen. I'm the co-chair of Artscope, that's Woodland Pond's art organization. Irene Fitzgerald, our other co-chair, couldn't be here tonight, but she sends her greetings. But for some, the number one reason for being here is not for the art and not for the food, but to hear me read the evacuation notice. So, I'm not going to disappoint you. Well, we're very happy to have our esteemed CEO and CEO Michelle Maria here tonight. It's an opportunity to celebrate a return to normalcy. She would like to greet all of you with a few words, or a lot of words. I don't care, I get paid by the hour, so whatever you want. Anyway, it's what yours.
Thanks very much, Al. Hi, everybody. Hi. So good to see everyone. It's just, I mean, it's astounding. And you know, this is our first big event, other than the management Q&As that hardly anybody's coming to. So maybe we should do Artscope and then follow them with a question and answer session. Can we make that happen? Yeah, that's a yes. Okay. So welcome to all of our artists, our family members, our loved ones that were able to join us. It's great that you were able. Some people traveled in, you know, across the country to be here, and it's great for you and your families as the artists. And we love honoring accomplishments of our residents here at the community. And this is a great way to do it. The art is spectacular. I can't wait to hear what the artists have to say, what they want all of you to know about their pieces and their work. I'd like to give I'm sure this will happen at some point, but I'd like to officially thank Al, Irene in her absence, and the entire Artscope for curating not just this event, but all of the events that you've done. You are doing an absolutely remarkable job, and I'd like to give you a round of applause. For those that don't know, Artscope is not one of the original activities from Woodland Pond. This is something that's come to be over the last couple of years. 5.5 years. And the art shows have, you know, been a highlight of the community for as long as they've been being done. So I'm not going to ramble on and on because you know that I can. I'm going to hand this back over to you, Al, and I'm going to say to everybody, I hope you enjoy your evening.
Thank you, we will.
You know, all this work doesn't get on the walls magically, you know. We've got a crew. As a matter of fact, they're all sitting right there. You know, I guess they're all the hangers, and if they leave a hang together, they'll hang separately. Tom Natoli, Larry Randall, Bill Barbash, they do the actual hanging. Larry takes some of the pictures that appear in the Connected Living and in the mailroom promotions. Also the fearsome Carol Natoli, who lets the hangers know whether a picture needs to be moved an eighth of an inch up, down, left, or right. And Halima, you know, you're one of the few people where you don't really need to refer to a last name. You're like Sher and Charo and a whole bunch of them. Anyway, that's Halima Hassan, who provided the biographies on the post behind me. And Michelle Cacavano sitting right over here. We have Michelle with one L, Michelle with two L's. She's the official photographer for all the Artscope events, and she does a great job. Can't forget Connor Copeland standing in the back there, the tall, handsome young man. He's usually at the concierge desk, but tonight he's working overtime to video this event. It's been about a year and a half since our last live opening reception, but you know, you probably saw COVID forced us to have the virtual openings, but it didn't stop us from mounting new shows. We did that on a regular basis, except they were up a little too long, longer than usual. At past openings, we drew about 80 to 100 attendees. For George Gartrell, we had over 100. They were standing outside, you know, because there was no room in here for them. So this show was different. Would we draw 40? Would we draw 60? Would we overflow the room? Are our residents concerned about COVID? With Alex Trebek, is Jeopardy still a 7 o'clock competitor of ours? I see some Jeopardy viewers here, so I guess that answered the question. But we had no idea, but actually I see we've almost filled this place. I guess about 75 in attendance. That's pretty good. Actually, we're going to be showing it. If we had an overflow, we would show it in the classroom, and it's going to be on YouTube also. Connor has to set up a new file, and then it'll be up there. When the last virtual was shown on 1340, we really couldn't ascertain how many viewed the event. You can't do that, unfortunately. But I checked YouTube, and the number of views at that point was, hold on to your hats, 145. That's a lot. Even though I viewed it 3 separate times, but still, that's a pretty good number. That means family members and friends probably watched also. For those who are squeamish about appearing on a video, not to worry. Connor has a special app that makes you look 20 years younger than you are. Okay? So, anyway, I was somewhat familiar with Diane Tepper's photography and Barbara Hyman's paintings. I saw their work on the walls outside their apartments, but I wanted to wait until we could have a live opening so that Woodland Pond could get to meet them. One day, actually on the day George Kelvin moved in, I overheard one of the residents talking to his daughter, Rochelle. And I heard Rochelle say, he used to be a medical and science illustrator. Sweet music to my ears. So, I visited George, I saw his work, and it just blew me away. I've worked with illustrators in the past, but nothing like this. Okay. I knew with George, Diane, and Barbara, Artscope had a show, and it would be a great one. Although our 3 exhibitors had different backgrounds and different styles, they have one thing in common. They are now all part of Woodland Pond's creative community. And now to our talented trio. Let's start off with George Kelvin. George, we've had painters, photographers, fiber artists, but no one whose work remotely resembles yours. So tell us about yourself and your work.
The illustration that I'm most proud of is the illustration for the White House for Fortune magazine. I was asked to illustrate the West Wing of the White House. And they put me on a plane. They got my clearances set up, and away I went with my Polaroid camera and the rangefinder, and no idea of what I was going to do. But once I got there, it all started to come together. First of all, I had to know where Pennsylvania Avenue was. Because when I was taking my photographs, I had to orient them according to where Pennsylvania Avenue was. And fortunately, all the people who were escorting me, and I had two Secret Servicemen, one house detective, and one general person. I don't know who they were, but as I moved from room to room, they would clear off any classified information and hide it, and I was able to take my photographs, which helped me to illustrate the interior of the White House. Gerald Ford was president of the United States. And I don't know whether any of you remember the Niagara's affair, but a Cuban warship was firing missiles, a warship of ours, and there was turmoil in the White House. After I took all the Polaroids and the measurements, I got on a plane and went back to my office, and I started to think about what I was doing. Fortunately, I knew exactly what I was doing from my days in the Boy Scouts, where we had to make a map of our campsite, and by pasting off the right and left area, and putting it down on a piece of paper. That was very, very helpful. The entire illustration, the final illustration, was done by airbrush. Furniture, drapery, and detailing were painted by hand. For those of you who don't know what an airbrush is, it's a very fine spray painting device with a little turbine and a needle that goes 20,000 times per second. Each time, one little drop of paint comes off and is blown on the surface, and it creates a photographic like image. Okay, the next one is the expanding universe. Many times I'm asked to illustrate things that no person has ever seen. And working with scientists and astronomers and other people, I was able to get a visual image of and put it down on paper. The moons of Saturn. This was a painting that I did for Scientific American, and it was a first illustration of the theory of the moons of Saturn. The expanding universe. This astronomical painting involves the theoretical process of how galaxies expand in the universe. Some of the structures are based on observation, others are purely hypothetical. Colors were used in identifying areas of the text. This is an illustration of the nuclear reactor and its containment building with the heat exchange building to the right. I use strong colors against a neutral gray and white background to give the illustration clarity and to help the reader more easily see the featured components that are described in the text. Okay, how did it all start? As a kid, I used to take apart clocks, wind-up toys, and anything else that was mechanically oriented. I think I'm finished. Thank you.
Actually, I have a lot of questions for you, George, but I won't ask all of them. But
You know where he lives.
right. Having worked with illustrators and retouchers who use an airbrush all the time, all too often I saw the little container that contained the paint tip onto the artwork. Did that ever happen to you?
No.
Wow. That's remarkable. The other thing, I guess what people don't know, is using the airbrush is one thing, but you've got to cut friskets for
Yes.
all of these, shapes.
A frisket is a limiting device that masks off areas that you do not want to work on. It contains only the area that you want to work on. You can't make a mistake because the airbrush is unforgiving. You can't erase, you can't go back and do it over because the camera that they use sees through the layers of paint and it's just not possible to make a mistake. So I spend my life trying to not make mistakes.
George, how long did it take you to do the West Wing?
The what?
The White House.
The White House took me about a week.
That's all?
That's all.
Oh my gosh.
Because they had a deadline, a printing deadline that I had to meet. Another interesting thing about the White House is that when they saw it, they were totally blown away, so that the editor and the editor-in-chief said, "This is too big for the magazine. We're going to do a fold-out page. First time ever, Fortune had a fold-out page."
Wow.
And in addition, they had an editorial column about me and my work. First time ever.
Terrific.
Hang on one second, you have to have the mic so the people on the closer to television can hear the question.
Well, having grown up in this household, George's son, one of the three kids, it was quite an interesting place. My dad had a studio in the attic, and when my parents would go out to restaurants and whatnot, me and my siblings would go up and mess around with all the art equipment and try to figure out the compressor and the airbrush. And I remember one time getting that 20,000 a second needle stuck in my finger, which was really painful. But it was, the other thing about my dad is really incredible stuff came out of the attic, all these paintings, and out of the basement, he was a woodcrafter and did all sorts of woodwork and built couches and closets and furniture in our house in this very kind of unique Japanese style. And it was always just a super fascinating. My brother is a good artist. I'm not much of an artist. I'm an accountant, so I went the other way. But it was really just incredible to see these works come out of the house. And we saw the Polaroids of Dad sitting at Henry Kissinger's desk, and all these very interesting pictures from the White House. It was super cool.
I'm envious that he didn't have to commute 3 hours a day back and forth to New York, like some of us.
Yeah.
Anyway, are there any other questions, or have we covered George pretty well? Okay. Now we'll move to Barbara.
I started dancing at the age of 10, going once a week. My cousin Selma Hillman taught the class. She was in the company of the Ballet Russe de Monte Carlo. In high school, I began to study ballet in tow 3 times a week with a Russian teacher, Madam and Mr. Svoboda. I studied and graduated from Bard College with a Bachelor of Art and majored in modern dance and choreography. I composed 2 works. The last work, my teacher took my place in the performance as I couldn't dance because I was pregnant. I had married an oncologist, Dr. George Hyman, and when I graduated, I was 6 months pregnant. I had then enrolled in Juilliard when my first daughter was 16 months old. And after 6 months at Juilliard, my husband said, "You belonged at home." So I did quit, and 10 years later, I went back to Juilliard and studied with Anthony Tudor in ballet and tow, Martha Graham in modern dance, and Jose Limon, who was in modern dance. I was there 3 years when I tore my tendon in my foot and had to have surgery where they put in 2 new tendons after I had therapy. I was delayed in dance while I was at Juilliard, and I encouraged my children to enroll, and all 4 children went to Juilliard. I studied, my daughter, Lynn, the oldest daughter, studied violin, and my youngest son and my also studied the violin, and my other daughter studied the piano, and my son, who's an orthopedic doctor, studied the cello. My oldest daughter, Lynn, is a photographer. She's here tonight to stand by me. In 1965, I took a, let's see, I think in 1965, I taught modern dance to adults in Aspen, Colorado. And in February 1964, I was asked to teach at the Aspen Meadows Institute. I could not because of my surgery. When I moved to New York from Tenafly, New Jersey, when my children were in college, I wanted to do something creative. And I couldn't dance, so I enrolled in the National Academy of Design. I studied with Leon Kroll in a painting class, and after 2 weeks, he invited the class to his home to see his work. I told Mr. Kroll I felt I shouldn't be in his class because I didn't know how to draw. Well, he disagreed, and he said you don't have to know how to draw to paint. But I didn't believe him, so I quit and then enrolled with Joseph Hirsch, a drawing teacher. Let's see. In his class, he taught the students to see and observe. In my first drawing, as Mr. Hirsch would go around the class and speak to the students, and as he stopped at my table, I said to Mr. Hirsch, is there anything I could do to improve my drawing? And as he passed me, he said in a loud voice, anything you can do would improve it. Well, I started to cry and I ran out of the room to the bathroom, composed myself, and then came back, and from then on, he was very nice to me. The second year with Mr. Hirsch, he chose my painting to be in the student show at the National Museum, and the only other painting he chose out of the class was a Moneta's painting. Lady Bird attended the show and was representing the White House. Some of the teachers I studied with was Mr. Hollenbach with acrylics, Mr. Elliskew, who was a sculpting teacher, but unfortunately I had to leave his class because of an injury to my shoulder. Another teacher I studied with was Mr. Dynasty. The first thing he taught us was how to prime a canvas, and when that was dry, he told us to draw the model, and after the paint, to paint lightly the colors. The next time the class was held, he said to me, Barbara, you're gonna love the next model. She's a dancer. Well, I was excited, and I was picturing a tutu or a leotard and tights, or a modern dancer with a long outfit. He comes in, and the model comes in, and he puts her in a heavy coat, high boots, and he sat her in a chair. Well, you couldn't see anything. So he came over to me and said, you know, from now on, I think you should just draw. And I said, but I came to learn how to paint. He had a different idea about that than Leon Crow, who I studied with first. And he said, no, you should do a drawing every session. And I left his class and went to study with Mr. Gumbel, who was a creative teacher. And he said I didn't belong in Mr. Dinastein's class. So the other teacher, Leon Crow, I forgot, was my first teacher that I went to the academy for, because I chose him because there was a huge line outside and I didn't know what teacher to go to. And I figured he must be good. So I stood on the line, and he really, I thought I'd go back to him after I learned how to draw. But unfortunately, he died before I could go back. So before I moved to Florida, I studied for 3 days with Robert Kulick in oils for 3 private lessons with fruits and flowers and still life. He was a patient of my husband's, and that's how I was able to study with him, because he was quite well known at the time. So in 1964 I began, oh wait a minute. No, in 1991 I moved to Florida, and in 1992 I studied with Jack Jackson and Barbara Wassman at the Armory in West Palm Beach. Barbara Wassman allowed me to listen to music while I was painting, and that's when I did this very modern work. I felt movement, and it was very different for me, and I enjoyed it. I love music, so I'm sure everybody does. Well, in 1964, I stopped painting and I began to study ballroom dancing. I didn't think I'd ever dance again, but I had ballet and modern training, and I was able to work very well with, and the teacher of the school in West Palm Beach made me his dance partner. And I didn't want to tell him my age, but I told him I was, and he thought I was 10 years younger. We went to a dance competition in Las Vegas where I won a gold medal in a younger division. The next year we went to New Orleans where I won my second gold medal in the 50 to 60 division, even though I should have danced in the older division earlier. When I moved to Seattle in 2014 to be with my daughter Terry, who lived there with my grandson, in Seattle, I had a show at the Horizon House where the art department chose my work for their show. And in January of 2019, I had a show in Peekskill, New York, called The Elders of the Tribe, which was a group of artists over 60 years old at the Sia Gallery. And now I have moved to New York to be with my other children, Dr. Barry Hyman and Lynn Butler. So my last son is in England, so it's harder for me to see him. He did come to Seattle to visit, and I'm hoping to have him come here as soon as the virus is finished. Did I mention my daughter Lynn not only is a photographer, but she also breeds collies and show dogs. And she came with a collie one day, and everybody thought it was quite beautiful. And she has a lot of show dogs. Thank you very much. Oh, I didn't tell you about
I've seen Lynn's photographs. I'm more interested in the photographs than the collies. And I think maybe somewhere down in the future we'll have a show of her work.
That would be lovely.
Gorgeous stuff.
Yes.
Let me ask you this, Barbara. You've got a lot of different styles, as most of us end up doing. Is there a favorite among your styles, or,
Well,
like children, do you love them all?
Well, this man with the strap on his shoulder, I felt at that time, very sad about not being able to dance. And a lot of my faces are sad for some reason or another. This one, the violinist, I associate with my son in England, who's the violinist. He played was at Juilliard, and he still is a violinist. Unfortunately, the virus has not allowed them to play at certain places, so it's a little hard. He took a teaching tennis when he couldn't do that, and then they stopped them from teaching the tennis. So he's having a little hard time.
The
The head of that girl at the end is an oil, and I only did 2 oils. The bottom one is from Kulik, the artist that I had studied for 3 days, and the other painting was Mr. Jackson in Florida, and he did the same model in class, and he gave it to me because I copied his, and I have it upstairs, hanging one under the other, and I like that. I didn't ever think I could do a serious thing, because I always felt I was more of an impressionist.
What about the one behind you?
Oh, that I did in Hirsch's class.
Good job.
Joseph Hirsch, the charcoal.
That's interesting, because
I like
we
that.
originally had a different painting there. Okay.
Oh,
When
yes,
I
that's
went up to her apartment, I took stuff off the wall and put it down on her bed. This was one of those. You really needed 2 people to lift it. And then I picked several others. I put them up, and she said, "What about these paintings that are still on my bed?" So I went up there, and she said, "But I like this one. It's the last one I did." So we had to do a little switching, but the customer's always right. Anyway, And this you told me was
Oh,
the
this I
first
did
one?
in 1990 at my sister's house. She lived on the intercoastal, could see the boats going by. And I just did like a very fast painting of the boats. So,
Yeah. Well, there's also one in the back that I like very,
Oh,
very
yes.
much. I don't expect people to
that's an
stand around.
earlier work.
Yeah, lovely.
Yes.
The model with the arms crossed. Yeah, I think it's terrific. Okay. Well, listen, Barbara, thank you. That leaves Diane Tepper.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I'm Diane Tepper, and I am delighted to be here. I came during COVID, November 2020, and I felt as if I was trapped. Without my photography, I don't know what I would have done. Every day, I shoot. I either shoot from my window, or I shoot in my apartment, taking pictures of whatever catches my eye. And what catches my eye is generally something that I don't believe anybody would be drawn to. I'm sure there are people who are drawn to wonderful things, but I have this nutty eye. I sometimes take pictures on the ground, I'll take pictures every place. But let me tell you how I started. I started as a very, very young girl. My first camera was a Brownie, and it took forever to get the pictures printed. Nothing like our digital times, where it's really very exciting to be able to see the image even before I think about printing it. When, let me just tell you, early in my career, I was an interior designer. I still am. I move furniture around in my apartment every day. If it's an inch off, I get crazy. And that's somehow what is true about my work. And I'm gonna start, oops. I'm wearing my fancy shoes that don't have good balance. I began really as a photographer of my clients' homes. And I took before, I took after, I took them, I took their children. It was like just a way to engage with people. And the engagement became a friendship. I'm still in touch with so many of the people that I started with. And I started doing interior design in, let me see, what year was it? 1968. That was a long, long time ago. We lived in Syosset. I brought my children up, my daughter Nan here. My precious, wonderful daughter is a website designer, incredibly talented, natural knowing. And that is one of the wonders of life. As Barbara was talking about, she had an innate ability, and she kept going with it. And that was so delightful to hear about Barbara. And your daughter, by the way, went to ICP, which was one of the schools that I went to. And I met the best of the best. I met photographers who were world known. And I joined a group of the, I'm gonna call them elders. These people started in the 1930s, and there were very few women photographers at that time. But those photographers were so spectacular. There was a show at the Jewish Museum in New York of all of the members who were still living, and it was thrilling to see them, to meet them, and to hear their story. The thing about photography for me is it's when you're in the moment, nothing else matters. I see something and I'm drawn to it, and it's a passion. It's a passion. And I can't say anything more about it. If I didn't take at least a dozen pictures a day, I take more. Nan is going like this, and that's true. I just keep doing it. I keep doing it. And I also move furniture in my apartment every day. I think I may have said something about that. I don't know if any of you remember the Santini brothers in Brooklyn, where I grew up. I used to call myself a Santini sister. They were the noted movers at the time. As a very young girl, a number of my family members who are artists, we have a lot of artists in my family on both sides, my mother's side, my father's side. And my cousin Carol and my cousin George and little Diane, because I was the youngest, went to the Brooklyn Museum. And we studied with really important teachers. One of whom was Reuben Tam. I don't know if anybody knows that name, but a very, very outstanding person. And I painted, but I gave it up. I never thought about it really until a few months ago. My brother passed away. His widow sent me a painting that I did in 1960, and I was shocked. I couldn't believe. I didn't really remember it. I sort of remembered it, but I didn't remember it. And the way I look at a creative person can do anything, really do anything. If that person is interested in one part of art, they can transfer to another. But my love today is photography. So let me show you, or tell you about some of these. These are New York street scenes, and I don't know what to say, but I always had a premonition about danger. I grew up, the war was over, World War II, but the times were difficult, and I grew up with a feeling of noticing something that could be dangerous. So as a street photographer, I started doing this. And this one in particular, I had no idea what this was, but it was a big X. And it was like, no. And basically what it was a marking on the street. This was only one of the markings of where people in the construction business or renovation, city work, they would see the mark and they'd know that they had to do something underneath, and that was their mark. But the colors just got me. And this one is really the one that is, it's danger. And it was near the UN. I lived in Manhattan, Midtown Manhattan, and I'd walk every day. This one is, very recognizable. Excuse me, I have to take this with me. This is recognizable. They're water lilies, but I turned it upside down so it gave a dimension. And it's just, you know, just the way I saw it. This one I took in Montauk. I lived in Montauk up until a few months ago, and I gave up the ocean for the mountains and for this divine group of people who are multi-talented, friendly, grateful, delicious. So I am happy finally to be here, that things are opening up. But when I saw this, it was against a wall, and one of the artists, because we're tons of artists in Montauk and on the East End, drew these wonderful line drawings that to me looked like little lambs. That's what it looked like to me. Other people have a different interpretation. They could be sheep, they could be lamb, they could be anything you want them to be. But I told myself a whole story about it, and it was just about happiness. This one is an abstraction, and unfortunately it's a little bit faded because it was in the sun in a window that I had, and I didn't realize it faded so much. But I took it in a bar, an East Hampton bar that's very well known, and I saw these beautiful glasses, and that's what they are. They're just glasses, drinking glasses, but they were against a beautiful background of blues and greens. And this one I took at the Ritz-Carlton in Chicago, where my family lived. I was visiting, and it felt, I took it through a glass wall, so it was very abstract, and it's dreamlike to me. And then it's up to you guys, when you have a chance to come back and really look at the art, to interpret it and see what it does for you. What moves you, if anything. Oh, this is a riot, this one. This one is a couple, a very, very happily married couple, friends of mine. I was at a party, and much to my surprise, I caught them in a most unusual way. He was saying something, and she, usually agreeing, or they're very happy together, she must have taken some offense and spoke her mind. And so what is it? It's the photographer's eye that sees things no one would have ever caught any of this in the moment I caught it. And that's, again, everything is in the moment. This is one of my favorites, and Barbara, you're gonna love the story behind this. I was at the Museum of Modern Art with a cousin of mine who had just come from Israel to visit me. She was someone we discovered through Ancestry, and she came to visit me. And there was a dance performance. Yes, there was. And I noticed this man, and he was he mesmerized? I don't know what he was thinking, but he struck me as someone who I would never forget. This one took place in Israel, in a small town called Sfat, where the Jews and the Arabs live side by side. Maybe not always happily, except in this picture. This, I assume, very religious man was walking down the street. This person was an Arab with the balloons. He was like an angel of life. That, again, my interpretation. And of course, this is Barbara's, which I love. I have one more, now, Which, oh, Buddy, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, thank you. This is another piece of my street photography in New York. Who is Buddy? Who is Buddy? Buddy could have been my daughter Nan's puppy. It could have been my buddy growing up, but for sure, we miss him. And that's the story with the guy. One more in the back, which is a very heavy piece, and I needed help with that one. This one is a tree on the property in Montauk where I lived for many, many years. And that tree symbolized life. No matter what, a tree can live thousands and thousands of years and still survive. And I'm mad about trees. And if I ever get a chance to show more work, I will show all of my trees. I'm willing to print them, frame them, and show them. And basically, I think that's it. I just want to tell all of you, there are some of you that I really know. Friendly, kind, delicious, delicious. We found out, my daughter Nan and I found out that we have coincidences with these two people, Lionel and Shamar, that you just wouldn't believe. And I'm not gonna go into that now, but if you dig deep enough, we're all related. We're all one. Some of us are easier to be with, and even people who were not that easy to bring out, even with my little iPhone, it's magic. From all of you delicious people. I said delicious weather once. I did repeat myself. And that's basically the story. I could do this until the day I die. And I intend to.
Of all the names I've heard tonight, the one that brings back memories of the Santini brothers. We had one of them in my neighborhood in the Bronx. And if you straightened him up, he was probably about 6'6", but he always wore, I'm serious, you know, the job eventually got to him, but he was all bent over. It was fascinating. They what? They moved you twice? So now you know who they are. And when you see them, tell them how much you enjoy seeing their work. Take it from me, artists love praise. This brings a close to another Artscope opening reception. This work will enhance these ugly yellow walls for a while. Until the next exhibit, so stay tuned. And on behalf of Artscope, I'd like to thank the three artists, Michelle for being here tonight, and all the rest of you for being here. So good night and drive carefully.